Father, Son, and Violin. A personal life story tells the vivid of Mao's China. Daniel Olson Chen. Dedicated to my parents and all of their generation.
Special acknowledgements.
My special thanks to Ms. Mercedes Larbenz. Without her encouragement and inspiration, hard work in editing, artwork and her publishing assistance, this book would never have been made public. Chapter 15, the fourth stage of my violin studies. 1. Goodbye Nene, and go to Shanghai. The evening before my departure for Shanghai, I went to Lee's home to show my gratitude to his wife and you, but found they were both absent on a vacation. Sorry, a slip of the tongue. They were not on vacation but a business errand. In the communist period, it was common practice for officials taking private vacation, or combi, with the name of business errand, so that all the costs could be reimbursed. Nene was the only one left home. Seeing me walking away, Nene asked,
"Wouldn't you sit with me for a while if I invite you to?"
Two young people sit together, alone, what could they think, if not have happened? Nene's face flushed like a peach. She sat a meter away, beside me, asking me timidly,
"Have you thought, if I say yes, will you take me?"
She was moving toward me, little by little as she said that. By then I realized that she was not just teasing me nor testing me, she could mean for real. I started to fear the consequence.
Aye, this is a rather serious matter that I'll have to ask your mother about before I say anything.
Hearing that, Nene's mood changed suddenly. She stood up and spit out her words with disappointment.
"Ask my mother first. I thought you were different."
She paused, and went on.
"I'm not my mother's thing. Why does everybody want to ask my mother?"
She paused, and then sounding as if talking to herself she said,
"I think I am going to marry the first man who asks me, only me, not my mother, to marry him."
I found such words from Nene's mouth extremely seducing and encouraging. I wonder what kind of action you would take if you were in my situation. For me it was too much to endure. I embraced her. With certain gentleness, spontaneously I started to take off her clothes. She subconsciously resisted a little and then let me. Suddenly a voice came to my ears.
"When are we going to get married? Because if you do this, we're going to have a child."
This was what Mimi said when we tried to do it for the first time. I stopped. Nene looked rather disappointed. She started to take off her clothes by herself, piece by piece, but at the last part and last moment she also stopped. Her flesh was white, transparent, elastic, delicate, and juicy. I appreciated her beauty rather than sexual desire. Even today, I could still clearly remember her body, like a piece of art. Saying gorgeous would be inadequate. It was simply one word: beauty. A beauty that made my whole body stiff but my man part soft. The power of a woman's glamour is so magical and varies. Some makes a man excited and rush forward like a mortar, while some makes a man nervous and withdraw one's part inside like a tortoise. I was not ready to get married and have a family, absolutely not. I didn't know why, but I just felt something wasn't right. All I could do was make myself an excuse. Only myself knows that whenever it comes to a crucial moment, I'm actually quite serious, decent, and traditional. I picked up her clothes to cover her breasts that I had already appreciated well enough and said,
"I think, perhaps, we should wait until we are mature enough."
Nene was obviously not very pleased with my lie. She embraced me politely and said,
"Now, at least I know what a real gentleman is like."
Being very honest, later I regretted a little, maybe a little more than a little, countless times. Until today, I still imagine how it could be if things didn't go that way. But the regret with Nene was left there, forever. The next morning early, Mimi came to my dormitory and declared that she was, on behalf of my whole family, to see me off at the station. That again sounded odd, as how could she come on behalf of my family when she was by no means a member of my family? However, it was better than nobody seeing me off at the station. At least she could help me with some of my luggage. Later, during most times in my life, I have been alone on departure, alone on arrival, in many places around the world. After waving goodbye to Mimi at the station, I hurried to the compartment, fighting for space on the luggage rack. As soon as I swept my sweat and sat down by the window, I saw Nene running into the station with great haste. A station personnel carried something following her closely. I quickly got off the train. Nene looked relieved when she saw me. She took the thing from the station personnel and handed it up to me. I'm not good at cooking, but surely it's better than the meal on the train. Holding the handmade lunchbox, I suddenly felt extraordinarily touched and wondered whether I should leave my luggage on the train, forget the whole thing about Shanghai, and go back with Nene immediately to live another life. After the train whistled twice, I was still staring at Nene foolishly. If it hadn't been for that station personnel's push being strong enough, I would most probably have missed the train. Now I recall the whole story. That station personnel's push was a push of historical importance, as my whole new life was started from that push. I waved to Nene, and promised I would come to see her the next time I came back to Changsha. In reality, that was our farewell. Nene and me, we never saw each other again. Nene, as a friend, in fact a little more than a friend, I still miss her from time to time, not badly, but lightly. No matter whereabout or how about she is always there in my mind. I believe she is the same too. What is that? Hazy love. You tell me. Like that, I said farewell to Nene and that part of my life in my hometown, Changsha City, Hunan Province. My very first days in Shanghai. It's not that I purposely draw a portrait of myself as a rube or a country bumpkin in order to make you laugh, it's that I really was a country bumpkin when I was placed in a big city like Shanghai. I remember the first time I went to Shanghai. I possessed no suitcase, therefore I had to wrap everything in a bed sheet. That was my main piece along with my yellow army bag, violin, and other small items. Added together, the result was about equal to the weight of the main piece, hence I carried the two pieces on my shoulder with a bamboo pole. But when the train arrived in Shanghai, my carrying pole was northwest longer at the place that it used to be. It must have been taken by some comrade who needed it more badly than I. I had to wait for everybody to get off the train before I could move my stuff piece by piece from the train. Luckily, if not by God's will, a rope that some countryman dropped solved my problem. I tied my main piece at one end of the rope and the others on the opposite end, one piece in front and the other on the back on my shoulder. My back arched. With that appearance, I stepped into Shanghai, one of the biggest and most luxurious cities in the world, then and still now. As soon as getting out of the station, I bumped into two pretty, young Shanghai ladies. I did have an excuse that I needed to ask the way, but what I wanted more was to hear a Shanghai girl's creamy coy voice. The voice was heard, yet not at all creamy nor coy, rather a mocking tone with a single word, alien. That voice of snootiness carved deep in my heart so that I still remember. It was at that very spot and moment I made up my mind, one day, I will make Shanghai girls raise their heads, admiring me like a bright star in the sky. Good people are always the majority, even in a city like Shanghai. With the help of some good-hearted people, I finally found my way to the Shanghai Conservatory of Music. I stayed at the guest house of the conservatory. It was a one-story house by the side of a football field. It had 8 small rooms, overcrowded with 10 people just like me, coming from all over the country to be gold-plated. I still have the aftertaste of that part of life, the different smell and taste from each person. The body odor, sweat and foot smell, etc., that blended together to be the big Chinese national harmonious taste symphony. No wonder Uncle Big Head, the Shanghai guy who was in charge of the guest house, disliked us as if we were a pile of dog shit. The very first thing I did in Shanghai was visit teacher Xing Zhonghua. As soon as I was notified of the fees for the lessons, fees would be reimbursed by my orchestra back home, the lesson started. She gave me a lot of homework at the first lesson and then someone's phone number, asking me to purchase some blueprint reproduction copy music notes from him. At that time, the majority of violin literature was still unavailable, and there were no copy machines then, but it turned out, most of the music sheets she asked me to buy were never used. It was just a kind of business between the sheet music maker and the teachers. I felt rapid progress in my violin performance during that period of time, ironically not due to teacher Sheng's teaching efforts but the outstanding musical environment. In fact, teacher Sheng was expecting her second husband's baby, and so far along that she couldn't even pull the bow straight across a violin. In the Shanghai Conservatory of Music were gathered the most talented violinists. I could learn from practically anyone I saw. In addition, from time to time I received free tutoring from Xing Zhongxiang, the younger brother of my teacher Xing Zhonghua, known as the king of technique among our fellow students. Just when I was feeling great and thought my violin playing ability would leap to the national level, teacher Xing cut off my lessons due to giving birth. Hence, I found teacher Yulina, the one who recorded the only Chinese violin concerto, Butterfly Lovers, one of the best violin teachers at that time and still today. Tail up, I went into teacher Yu's lesson room, tail down when I got out. She treated me like a beginner, a child, asking me to do all the very basic practices which I did a long time ago and had already forgotten. In addition, she was extremely strict on my playing. She would even count how many times I should vibrate on each note. I endured the hardship for less than 1 year, much harder and more bitter than the time I spent with teacher Guo back home. Many years later I started to understand that to learn from either teacher Guo or teacher Yu was just against my nature, for what they wanted to educate was a violin player good for any orchestra in the country, not a soloist with characters or features, which is what I wanted to be. As a person, I respect teachers Guo and Yu much, much more than teacher Sheng, as I could feel the love and passion when they were teaching and the strong sense of responsibility as a teacher, treating their students as works of art rather than customers. Time flies. 1 year passed quickly. According to teacher Guo's advice, I registered for the entrance examination at the Shanghai Conservatory of Music, behind the back of my Hunan radio and TV orchestra. In that year, the conservatory had only 2 places for violin students, while the applicants numbered over 200 from all over the country. The first stage was not a live audition but a recorded tape. When the result was on the wall, I found my name was missing from the list. After my prompt inquiry with teacher Yu, I learned it may be that my tape was mixed with someone else's. However, teacher Yu comforted me by emphasizing that even if I was lucky enough to get to the second stage, there was absolutely no chance for me to get to the final. In this sense, getting to the second stage would only give me a little face when I went back to my home province. Teacher Yu's words really did give me a certain consolation. At least I could use it as the perfect excuse for teacher Guo. I immediately sent a telegram to teacher Guo and then thought of packing my things and getting ready to return to Hunan, where I was from. I even imagined Nene might be there waiting for me. But the next morning I received a very short long-distance call from teacher Guo.
Do not move. Stay there.
I'm leaving right away, and will be in Shanghai tomorrow.
The next several days I followed Teacher Guo to almost every single one of the conservatories that had something to do with the exam, and met every dean and vice dean of the department. In the end, we visited the home of the conservatory director Yi Luden, one of the most influential composers in New China, who was also originally from Hunan. When his wife answered the door, Teacher Guo suddenly uttered a fluent Hunan dialect. Teacher Guo was from the north part of China and her language was Mandarin. That changed our status from students to guests from home. When she heard that her husband's conservatory never had a violin student from Hunan province, the home province they were from, she looked a little surprised.
Is that so?
She said.
I'll call the dean and ask if it's true that the tapes got mixed up.
Next morning, Dean Yuan rushed to the guest house to notify me.
Prepare yourself for the second stage exam.
I was so pleased that I took all my money out of my wallet, which was 5 yuan RMB, wanting to take Teacher Guo for a meal as celebration. Instead, I was scolded by Teacher Guo.
Things haven't even gotten started. Go back and practice your violin at once.
Are you seriously thinking that I have a chance?
I took the courage to talk back.
Teacher, you already told me that I had little chance. To get to the second stage is only to give me face to go back to Hunan.
You think I came from so far away, and walked you door to door having done all this only for you to save face? Please listen to me very carefully. You have to do your best, more than best, absolutely, to get yourself into the conservatory.
Thank you so much for doing all this for me, Teacher Guo.
I said politely.
You're welcome, and it's for me too.
Teacher Guo replied.
For you too. Why?
I thought. It took 3 days to go through all of the exams, including a live performance audition and a paper test of musical theory, etc. As soon as the exams were all over, Teacher Guo started to get busy again. She went through all of her network and discovered good news for me. She told me excitedly.
You don't need to go back to Hunan anymore.
Immediately she asked me.
Where is the 5 yuan RMB that you wanted to take me out for a meal with?
I rummaged through all my pockets. There was only 3 yuan and 84 fun left.
There is still a week before your payday. How can you make ends meet with this small sum? Follow me, I'll take you to a relative of mine, we'll eat with them.
Teacher Guo took me to her relatives, Aunt Seng. That visit, later, became vitally important. Let me put it more concretely. To meet Aunt Seng's daughter Dongya, a very serious and supercilious artist, was crucial for me in the days to come. The day after, I saw Teacher Guo to the Shanghai train station. Looking at the clouds, Teacher Guo said something profound.
Look, all the people at the station start their journey at the same point, but once getting on the train they all go in different directions. Directions that lead them to entirely different worlds, where they will live different lives. You know what I mean? Once you get on the train of a university, it will take you to a totally different world.
I didn't pay as much attention as I should to her chatty words as I was suddenly reminded of Nene. When Teacher Guo's train was approaching, Teacher Guo said to me very sincerely.
In the road of life I could only lead you to this spot, hereafter it is for you yourself to go forward.
I didn't really understand why Teacher Guo wanted to help me so much. I was no more than one of her students, not even a favorite one. But later, from her husband I learned, Guo, as a teacher, treated her students as her own works results. Saying, a composer needs to have good musical works, artists need to have good works of art, novelists need to have good novels, and a good teacher needs to have good students. I, as an example, later become one of her works results of which she could be proud. However, Teacher Guo's husband didn't tell me the whole truth. It was after a few decades, after Teacher Guo passed away, that I found out the real reason Teacher Guo wanted me to be successful so badly, and the truth is very cruel, too cruel to tell at this point. Thank you, Teacher Guo. I have never been a good student of yours, but I respect and am grateful to you as much, if not more, than any of your students. Three, Freshman, Accommodation, and Donya. On the new students' enrollment list, again my name could not be found. This time I went to see the dean of the enrollment office immediately, by myself. The dean told me,
"You have passed all of your exams, but we aren't able to have you this year due to a housing problem. You'll have to wait until next year. Of course, there will be no need for any exams."
That's not possible. I mean, it's impossible. I have to start this year.
My strong tone showing my firm determination.
Unless...
He paused.
Unless what? Whatever.
I asked eagerly.
Unless you can provide accommodation for yourself, for the first year, just like the other local Shanghai students would.
He said.
No problem.
I said very positively. However, the truth was not no problem. In fact, it was a problem, a huge problem, as I had no relatives, no friends, absolutely no one in Shanghai to turn to for help. Where on earth could I find a place to stay in that vast city? The contract for the bed I slept in for a year at the guest house was due to expire. I had to tie up my things and put them under the bed of a friendly former roommate. Carrying my violin and yellow army bag, I walked off the campus. With no destination, I walked and walked. It must have been close to the middle of the night when I found myself under Aunt Zhang's window, the relative of Teacher Guo where once she had taken me, the only window of someone's home in Shanghai that I had looked out through once. When a young man in his 20s is cornered, how much is face worth? I ascended to the 5th floor, knocked on the door. When Donya, the daughter of the family, opened the door, a devil glided into her home and later, into her life. Hearing that I was too late to get into the conservatory campus, they let me stay on their living room sofa overnight. The next day, I told the truth, that I was temporarily out of a place to stay. Of course they had no idea that temporarily meant a year. Donya said, without hesitation before her mother.
"Stay in my room, I can stay with Mom for a few days."
There was a ray of light in Donya's eyes, the ray of light when young boys and girls meet, which I had experienced a couple of times before. Several years later, Donya told me that the moment she opened the door, such a sentence emerged in her mind.
"A handsome young man with a violin in his arms walked into my life."
Every day I would leave Donya's home very early. After a long day of classes I would stay on campus late, trying to cause as little trouble as possible to Donya's family. 1 week had passed and everyone seemed to get used to the new family style, until one day a shocking event took place. It was a Sunday morning. As I was free from school I stayed in bed late. Meanwhile, Donya was in the bathroom, thinking I was at school as usual. She entered her room, now the room I was using, without knocking, naked. Her white delicate body reminded me of Nene. The regret that I left at Nene's place pushed me towards her. Donya looked awkward, standing there like a statue. It was cold too. I held her back and led her to the bed. But to be frank, I was not really ready for that. It was just the physical instinct for a young man to touch the body of a woman. This time, nothing happened. Donya was uneasy in the beginning, but gradually she got used to it. Turning her face to me, she kissed me, on my eyes. Smiling, with joy and happiness. Suddenly, she jumped out of the bed, as she heard the sound of a key in the keyhole opening the door.
"Mom is back from food shopping."
Quickly she ran to the door and then returned again, remembering what she was there for in the first place. She took a cloth from the clothes cupboard, gave me a quick smile again, and was out. The next day after school I didn't stay on campus. Instead I was waiting for Dongya to come back from work, at a bus stop. To make the most of my time I borrowed the very dim street lamp under the bus stop to do my harmonics homework. This grew to be a habit. Every time the bus drew near, Dongya would wave at me from inside and jump out of the bus and throw herself, I mean her hands, on me. We were young, we were in love, we were very happy. We were both aware that we were girlfriend and boyfriend, and we both were in that age, though the naked hugging business never had a chance to happen again. However, this situation didn't last very long, as very serious and conservative-natured Dongya made our relationship open to the whole family without consulting me. It was the next Sunday morning again. Dongya's elder brother Xiaoming and younger sister Xiaoli all came home. Everyone agreed that it was our free will to love each other and no one had the right to interfere. However, to stay in the same house before marriage would lead the neighbors to a wrong impression that the two are actually living together. Therefore I was given two options: A. Go on staying there but cut the boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, or B. Keep the relationship going but move out immediately. Nevertheless, to me, I had only one way to go out immediately from their home, for the sake of saving face for Dongya, though to me, staying was of the utmost importance. I wrapped up all my stuff in a bed sheet, leaving it temporarily there, under Dongya's bed. Again, I carried my violin, walking out of Dongya's home, only to enter again 2 decades later, as an honored foreign guest. On the street, this time not alone but accompanied by Dongya. Isn't it universal that when happy, people like to be together, yet when sad, people want to be alone? At least I did. We walked and walked without knowing where to go, until we both were exhausted and sat on an ice-cold street stone bench, trembling. Dongya's little romantic mood at the beginning was spent by then. We sat there, quietly, no conversation, no word, for a long, long time, until Dongya remembered that her art teacher, Wang, had a tiny small work studio. That night I slept on the work table of teacher Wang's. Strange enough, I felt that hard cold table more comfortable than any of the star hotels I stayed at later in my life.